Thank you all for joining us. Thank you. It's all
There's more than one. I like the maybe it's usually just right anyways. No. Or you can't do it.
There's more in this meeting.
Hold on, let me pause. My God, is it coming out there? Is it not there? I think it's like in Indiana. There you go.
You're technically inclined.
Oh, I don't.
It says full sound that I see.
Yeah, they may have it. Okay, can everybody hear better online? Sorry about that.
You get a thumbs up?
Yeah, I think so.
Hey, I just did this last week, so I'm just speak like. Okay. All right, good morning, everybody. Are we good?
We're good.
All right. I'm gonna thank you all in advance for your patience on both my technology. I couldn't even get my coffee maker to work this morning. That's why I had to stop to spend all my money at Starbucks. The sound on the computer, and this is a fluid meet, okay? And I'm facilitating all on my own. Here, Jeff's over there assisting me, and Daniel's co-pilot over here. He helped me get the printables out. Thank you for those who are online. We do have print materials in the room. I'm gonna let people know here what it is, and then you all online can listen so that you kind of know what we're reading off of. I didn't print off all 300 pages of both reports. I just went for the recommendations. So this color one that you have, this came from our Upper Savannah River Basin. So it's the executive summary of the recommendations. So this is what I'm utilizing to look at our recommendations as we go through. And then the other three, there's an implementation one, but that's for after lunch. So don't worry about that right now. The other three all come from the state water plan. And I guess I'm supposed to open this meeting. So I'll do that after I do this. I got chapter 7. This is the water SC recommendations. Chapter 8 are the River Basin Council recommendations that like made it into the plan, like in the body of the plan. And then Appendix C goes over all the RBC recommendations and which RBCs kind of like we're all in. And so it says like 1 recommended, 6 recommended, or what have you. That's what we're going to use as our guiding materials all along the way. But before I go there, I'm supposed to call the meeting to order. So I'm calling the meeting to order. I just went over our meeting objectives. So I need, I guess, a motion to approve the agenda as printed and orally described. Daniel? Scott?
Mac and again.
All in support? Any opposed? Okay, the agenda is passed. Then we also, I don't think we have them printed out. They were provided,
Yeah, they were provided back when we did the initial announcement.
provided online with the initial announcement of the meeting from our last meeting minutes. So since we're convening, we'll go ahead and see if y'all had a chance to review those minutes and approve them as shared online in the email.
You know, it was just from our last meeting.
It's our last meeting
There really wasn't much on there.
minutes.
Anybody want to?
Thank you. I appreciate it. Anybody want a second improvement the last meeting's minutes?
So, maybe not.
All right, all in favor? Any opposed? All right, here we go. Thank you very much. Announcement of newsworthy items. I don't think I've got anything outside of the deadline for these recommendations is Friday. If I remember correctly, is that right? December 7th. December 7th, that's Monday. Sunday night. Okay, all right. Sunday. Thank you, Catherine. Catherine's the co-chair of Saluda.
Correct.
Saluda. Thank you for joining us.
We just had our first implementation meeting last week, and so I wanted to come see what you guys were talking about. So thanks for allowing me that.
Absolutely. All right. And we do. Public comment period. I just commented on when it ends. It says agency comment period. Are you commenting any on what?
I have no comment.
Boy.
You will before it's all over, I think. Here, we're gonna turn around and ask some questions along the way. All right. Just real quick, let's see here. All right, so it is. I'm gonna sit down now. I'm not the only one in the room that was part of Water SC, so I'm not gonna solely describe the process. But what do we have? About 25 members, just like this group, from varying interest groups to comment on I'm gonna have time. So it's not really what went into the plan. We made recommendations from Water SC. We did not go over all of the RBC's recommendations and make recommendations that these things make it to the plan. So that is a full caveat of how the process is. The Water SC recommendations, we came from an educational process that took about 8 months. About half of the people on Water SC were part of the process of developing the framework and PPAC, and maybe had some other related water backgrounds. The other half of Water SC were industry professionals with very limited water background. So we took about 8 months, just like we did here. You know, John walked us through the interbasin transfers and all the things specific to the upper Savannah. They did that for Water SC, but on a statewide basis. Went through all of kind of components, water reuse, interbasin transfers, a whole slew of information to educate Water SC on state water uses and maybe the state thereof. And then just in the past 2 months is when we had the opportunity to start talking about recommendations. We did have a retreat at the end of the summer, which was a little bit more productive than the educational meetings, gave us a chance to, you know, kind of listen to each other a little bit more, debate each other a little bit more. And then I think we've had 2 meetings after the retreat in which this list of recommendations, which is chapter 7 of the state water plan, were developed and finalized. I have to say that probably a little bit limited. Our consensus process was a little bit different than the River Basin Council's consensus process, and nothing really made it in here unless it had full agreement of Water SC. Versus in this River Basin Council, we did have more of an ability to dissent, but it still make it into the print materials. Scott, would you like to say anything else on the process and where we are? Where we started?
First, I think we had promised this group and every other basin council that the work that you did on this council would not make them all. That was one of the concerns that we heard repeatedly with the Water SC. So rest assured, out of one of those informational sessions, we invited the chairs and vice chairs of all the basin council. It was their top two or three issues, whatever they were. Some had more issues, some were pretty quick. So the water SC group was familiarized with the issues that were occurring, that were reported to each basin council. That isn't to say that, the water SC recommendations necessarily align and address each and every one of them. That wasn't our focus. The focus of water SC was to focus on statewide issues, having heard from the grassroots, if you will. And there's effectively, I think, two chapters, or it's divided up, so that there is a delineation, a very, very clear delineation between the recommendations coming from the basin councils, which remain valid. I mean, they're the product of good work. And this group has worked really hard. And there's 7 others that did equally hard work. And those recommendations stand. They are available. They will be in the document. They weren't overridden. Some of the concerns that we had that, we're going to ignore what happened in it. No, that was not the intent. So what you have is all the grassroots stuff is presented in the council recommendations, and then you have the overarching water SC recommendation. We hope they align, and they may be counter to some individual basins. Some individual basins may have taken a different position. But they, as Jill pointed out, there were the consensus of 25 members that the governor appointed that represent very much the same cross-sectional group that we have here. Power and industry. Actually, we have probably a greater cross-section in water SC because it's odd. Here we asked for people to volunteer, and some people came, some people didn't, and some people were regular, some people weren't. When the governor asked people to show up, it's nice to be there. But so the water SC recommendations stand as they are. They are a group of recommendations that received a higher standard of consensus than. I don't know if it was 100% unanimous of their support, but there was none that were in disagreement. I think the disagreement was the one thing that had folks that I don't know, but I'll let it go. Here we may have had folks that disagree. That was, I know we did. I think Mac had a couple of disagree, and that's fine. Disagreement is healthy. It helps us understand what's going on. The one thing that I will also add, water SC process, highly compressed. It was a little too fast. I mean, here we took 2 years to do a basin plan. There we had 10 months. And then by the way, we'd like you to do 2 things. We'd like you to evaluate all the water laws in the state and make a recommendation. And by the way, we'd like you to also kind of sit on top of the state water plan. Either one of those would have been a bite in a year. Both of them are a little bit ridiculous. So it's a little aggressive. But to rectify that, we're going to present the plan to the governor. We will have a basin plan. Myra and DES have indicated that their goal is to make this more of a living document, at least in the near cities, which will allow continuous improvement over what I'm calling iteration 1, right, which is where we are now. The one thing we need to probably encourage DES to do is to pick a benchmark date and say, on this date, we will complete the in-house reviews of iteration 1 and move to iteration 2. Because one of the things that I think is going to be, that I've heard moving about the state, talking to everybody, every group, and even talking among this group, is that the comments are all going to say, but water quality. Well, we promised that everybody would have a chance to talk about water quality. And I think setting a benchmark date and saying that iteration 1 is over in a year or 2 years, whatever date works. But on that date, we start talking about reassembling basin councils, and we start the process to include a water quality component. It's going to be, I think that's the key to making this a truly ongoing process that's well-defined, rather than being something nebulous that no one knows. And I also think it'll be difficult to keep basin councils together if we go too long before we give them a new charge. And we've got a lot of, in this room, across the state, we've got a lot of folks that are a lot more educated on water issues right now. If you wait 10 years, they're all going to join me in retirement. We're going to be on Social Security when I come to pay. You guys are all young. I'm just saying, y'all have a chance to fight on that, on iteration two. I think we could make sure we continue to point DES in a direction of when do you start the next iteration and what's the scope of what goes in that scope of the second iteration. So.
All right, does anybody have any questions about water SC, what we did, where we came from, where we are now, where we're going?
Yes, ma'am. In reviewing some of the videos, do we have, what y'all mentioned there, the legal working group? Did we have a subcommittee and a legal working group?
In a way,
Well, that's what y'all said you have it.
in a way.
Can you
So,
expand
yes.
since Tommy Lavin on it, and I feel good about Tommy being on there because I know Tommy. But we haven't finished, this is a draft, but where's the legal work?
So-
Where is the legal working group? What's their focus?
Their
I'm not sure
focus
if
is
there's
whatever they're charged with it as.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, they've only been asked, does the existing regulations allow the department to address certain issues? That's really it. So, and they're not giving anything more than their basically individual opinions. They're not coming to a consensus. And the working group is Mr. Lavender, it's Mr. Eagle, they're Professor Eagle, the law professor at USC, and a couple of in-house or state attorneys. And I think they get a little bit of input from David Banks, who has a little bit of background on he hacked for a long time and he's here. But David doesn't render a legal opinion. He just kind of gives them an idea of this is how we view the regulation. And I think David was inserted in there so that we're able to keep DES staff more or less removed from, what they can't. I mean, right now, they may think they can do things, or they may think they can't do things. It'd be nice to have it.
Well, I'm glad that makes that point made, like you say, the regulation, because when I did go and review the video, and I like it, it's when you look at the slides that y'all went through, it does make reference to the regulations, and I like some of the slides reference the fact that where DES, I'll always say DES, I'm trying to learn to say DES, they've got certain powers, but they may need to enhance the regulations and do some of the things that. So it's staying. There are two sides of this story about what we need to go legal.
There are, and I think the legal group that was assembled, and it was, we asked for them, kind of let people that read law for a living. And it was more to interpret the existing regulation, because the department would say, we don't have the ability to do this, or we have to do this, and there's no decision. It's just, input A, output B, no choice. And I think the legal group determined that there was, or their opinion was that there likely was some oversight and some discretion. I don't know how much of that has to be changed in regulation to make the department happy. And I don't know how much of it is just having, that group say, it looks like a good deal. Go to the Attorney General and ask for an opinion.
Well, there you go again, like you brought up, I don't know if that was that much against anything, but I was always about, let's look at the regulation and do what we're supposed to do instead of writing a bunch of new laws. That's where I was.
That was really their task. And it was just one level above the layman, if you will. This is what we think. And if the group thought that something needed to be interpreted differently, and the legal scholars that we have agreed that it needed to be done that way, and the department said we're not comfortable, then maybe the recommendation would be ask the Attorney General to give them, specific guidance.
That's exactly right. Because you get too much around this room and around these tables, everybody says, no, we need to do this. No, we need to, what the law says we need to do, and let the legislature and DES figure that out, and with us. Other thing, Jill, we got the public comment period, and I love that. I think it's cool the way we do that. This meeting is run by the number. It has been Superintendent. why did the video stop? We told us all about transparency. Why did we stop taking videos of the water SC meetings in June, I believe it was?
The retreat, there was no ETV, representation when we did the retreat.
Okay.
We didn't convene with the two meetings that.
And then that's just June, because I was enjoying watching, some comments from the tabletop discussion. And I'll leave it at that. At this point, proceed. I didn't mean to monopolize your time.
No, it's fine. And when it comes to legal review, I mean, really the ask from the group was the statute and the regulations as a whole, like the whole shebang, and it would have taken a long time. So really, at the end of the day, little piecemeal parts of the statute and the regs, four little parts of it were looked at, and the legal opinions came out. But at the end of the day, the DES attorney was in the room, and these opinions and whether or not DES staff could actually do what these opinions are was still some conflict, because the agency's attorney's opinion in some places conflicted with the group's opinion, which means that the state agency actually could not, unless the
Only thing I will say, then, like, talking about the videos, okay, you know, probably nitpicking, if I'm being an ass, I apologize. But we do this and we're all on screen here, and you wanna know why you get pushed back in the countryside? If you tell somebody on the front end that they're gonna see what we did the whole way along, if they take time to go look, we on video right now, and and anybody can walk through that door and say what we want to say, what we talk about. But then when I go to the Water SC website and I look at the videos, okay, well, they're not there. And that ETV and whatever, okay, well, Tom makes it every meeting. Somebody ETV get there to do their job too. Thank you.
thank you. All right, water SC process, policy shared, summary. All right, yeah, I think so.
Pull up the, you want to pull up the, water SC stuff
So
first?
this is where we are. This is what we're trying to do. We're gonna look at the recommendations. I want your feedback on whether or not you have any issue with things that have been included. I want to know if you have any issue with saying, hey, something we want is not included, and basically, do we agree with all of it? This is a tough thing to do because there's a lot going on here. Thank you, Tom, and actually yours works, that aligns very well, and I think that's why you put it together for me with chapter 8. So this executive summary 6, that's what came out of our executive summary. I was just looking for a quick and easy, but Tom's quick and easy is quicker and easier than mine. So really, as we go through it, I would refer to what's going to be up on the screen here. And you also have a printout of this PowerPoint. And it aligns perfectly at the top
Pull up the
with chapter 8.
state water plan recommendations, right?
Right.
Okay, so that PowerPoint that Tom said is basically, I'm showing my age here, 6 notes.
I left room on the paper for people to write stuff down too, and just run it, or you can type them up and send them to me.
All right, give it up. But anyway, today we work off this slide,
Okay.
right?
And so, yes, but real quick, I didn't see we're going to say that water SC, just so you
Sorry,
understand.
you want to pull up?
That's all right. This next we'll go through real quick. That's fine.
Okay.
So this is the water SC recommendations. You have them in print. Like I said, they're limited. They're not as comprehensive. You see, we have way more recommendations that came out of ours. So these aren't very, they're not a lot of conflict oriented, so I can't see that will take a lot of time here, but I think we worked through all of them. All right, so continuing, a lot of it came with continuing support for state water planning, basically stating that water SC should continue on past the process to assist in guiding DES. That DES should request and encourage the legislature to continue funding for the water planning and process, including the planning, data collection, etc. That DES should pursue additional funding sources from both public and private sectors.
Well, that includes
That's what I'm looking.
RBC.
Yeah, that's wrong. Like, where's the RBC? It's part of this process.
I feel like if it's not.
Yeah, I don't see it explicitly mentioned from Water SC.
Yeah.
Did that not come out of our process? One of the recommendations from Water SC, there's nothing explicitly that states that
No,
those
there's not.
recommendations.
One of the things that I had, they had been suggesting to the department was that they, when it comes to come up with additional funding source, for them to try to create or acquire a pot of money that would then be available for competitive grants, if you will, or something, matching funds to come down to the different RBCs. If there's something that the RBC wants to do, you can get some local funds. The state should have a pot of money to kind of either match it or improve it and help move the implementation along. After all, you keep coming back to water is a state resource. It isn't something that they get all the benefit of without having any of the cost. They have to plan for it, they have to regulate it, monitor it. And if there needs to be improvements, to improve, whether you want quantity, availability, or water quality, or just the process itself, that's where the state should be trying to help fund. And I would hope that their share would be significant, and that's what the recommendation about collecting is for them to pursue all the funding sources they can to create that pot, if you will, or that grant pool.
But was your comment more specifically related to, it says it should continue the water planning process and Water SC, but does not specifically make any mention of the RBC's role?
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking that implementation of anything is going to be more difficult if some sort of coalition is not maintained. And I recognize that, money spent would be better spent on actual on-the-ground projects, but if you don't have people advocating for that, then I think it's gonna be hard to get that going.
I know that. I don't think our comments can necessarily guide Water SC recommendations, but we can certainly comment on where we think there might be a void in their recommendations. So I noted under the support for continued water planning, just what you stated, the implementation will be difficult without RBC stakeholders, and that Water SC recommendations did not specify that the RBC process continue and should. Is that kind of?
Yeah, especially Scott, if what you were saying, we should focus on the next iteration of water quality. I think it, like you said, it would be really hard to reconvene an RBC if there's significant time in between
Yes, that's.
quantity and quality.
Yeah, and we agree on that. And the other is that one of the things that is left unsaid. The State Water Planning Act says thou shalt do a water plan every 5 years. How long have we worked on it? I mean, the time that we really kicked off with is, the
Pandemic.
the initial model, when we kicked off at over at the ICAR Center, and they unveiled the
That was 2015.
Yeah, so I'm thinking 5 years might be a little bit tight. But we haven't defined what the cycle is. And we haven't defined when the next kickoff is, and I think that's too much uncertain.
All right. Then the next comments that came out, or recommendations that came out of Water C, similar to ours, coming out of the asking for some more collaboration between the states. So interstate water management, that should increase coordination with Georgia and North Carolina on our strategies and shared water resources. That DES should develop and implement education outreach communication plan on the efficiency of water usage throughout the state. So they're asking to have a little bit more robust of a process of public interaction. Then we got into drought response, the strengthening the drought response program. This is really only becomes incredibly important when the resource becomes incredibly limited. So to review the drought response committee structure, recommend actions to make the drought response more effective, including triggers. One of the basins, like the Catawba, has pretty well-defined triggers that the entire basin reacts on versus it being independent to each utility. And providing support to assist in the updating and implementing of the drought response plans. All utilities have one. They not necessarily update them on a particular basis, and particularly small utilities might need a little assistance in making an effective drought response plan that actually has triggers and action items instead of just who do we call and what do we ask of our peoples. Any questions or comments on the water management, education outreach, and drought response? Anything that's on their recommendations?
I got one just general comment on the interstate water management. One of the issues we had here was our relationship with Georgia on this matter. I would like to just put out that unsolicited at the last legislative or committee that, they have a joint committee that's overseeing state and this water SC process. Unsolicited from the chair were questions about our relationship with North Carolina on the one side, but on Georgia specifically with Georgia on the side. Do we actually talk to the people in Georgia? And we got we got a soft answer, but it does indicate that the legislature is aware that you cannot manage a 220 or 30 mile, boundary water, without, I don't know, talking to the people that you're managing it with. So I think that is, that's got the focus of the legislature. And I think probably put some really bright people in the room and figure out how that works. How do you get two states that they kind of ignored each other until they get ready to go to war with each other, to actually work together to manage the river? Is the next challenge. But I think that's, I would suggest, probably becomes more important in iteration 2 for this council. And for iteration 2 for the lower Savannah. Because water quality is going to be a bigger issue at managing than water quantity on the Savannah. That's just my personal opinion. So that's important for this group.
I'm glad you brought up Georgia. If you don't mind speaking. In September, I was in a water meeting in Columbia, and they brought up that the Georgia state legislature this past session has already funded the start of a project from the Savannah River to Atlanta. It was like, I believe, don't go me on the number, it was like $1 billion projects that they've already begun funding. We brought it up to DES. I know Joe Kuhn was in the room at the time and they were unaware. But you were talking about quality. Now I'm even more concerned about quantity.
They come from the Savannah River.
And it is a long stretch.
It is a long stretch.
They've been talking.
They're not. The easiest thing to say to get to Atlanta, they would have to come in pretty much below Thurman.
Yes.
Otherwise they can't take from Thurman. They can pay from us with a horrible. Or they could bring it in from the Tubular before it enters. The reason they can't take from those 3 lakes is because they would be in the same exact position they're in with the Lanier. That's the federal government. They're subject to a federal government allocation. And if they can't get it from Lanier, I don't know if they're going to be able to get it from anywhere, particularly the quantity they don't need. So if they're going to be taking either headwater, or they're going to have to go below the federal control. It's a long way to move water. It's a long way. It's uphill.
But I just wanted to say that
It doesn't make any sense. That's why I said Tuvalu is where I would.
It's us downhill. Well, like you said, we're not talking. I mean, we're doing all this stuff and then we forget about the fact whether they do it or not. The legislature budgeted the money to do it. We all know that may or may not happen. That money might get diverted in 3 years or somewhere else.
No,
But at least they're still talking about it. They weren't joking.
but the fact that they're.
Tanya attended a meeting prior to the last meeting we had here that was up in the upper reaches that had her, the back of her neck. Where and I don't remember the details, and that's why I asked if she was on here, but it had something to do with, this is a space, I see they have their eyes on it, this is where we're going to take it, I need to be involved. So I wish she was here because she would have been able to say a little bit more, but it was up in the upper reaches, the two versus definitely.
Yeah.
She had already had eyes on the prize and was tracking it closely. I also know Joe Kuhn from DES previously was going to be part of this meeting, but stated that is there a Georgia meeting that he's sitting in on, at least virtually today?
Yeah, there's a regional council meeting this morning that he's been on. There's no gift for support.
So I haven't heard a lot of that in the past, so I think it's got people's attentions, at least very least that they're sitting in on as invited and welcome on some of the Georgia Regional Council.
You know, I've in the past have spoken to some of the council meetings. And so there's some communication, but it's not a formal. It needs to be more formal, and I've got to think about it. Even North Carolina, we talked so many times in the meeting. There's some correspondence at my level, but we need something bigger than that.
Is this the right level for RBC level? Is this the right communication level? Go across the state line, or is it something?
We had, when this process first kicked off, before we met, I had encouraged DNR to convene us a little earlier. Because Georgia runs a planning process too, and right now we are exactly 180 degrees out. And I think the benefit would be to find a way to align the schedule so that when they begin their next planning process, what we do now, we have a chance to have a couple of joint meetings or have a few folks appointed to go there, and have a few folks appointed to come to ours and kind of share what they're doing, what they're thinking. I think that's what we need to do. And I think it needs to occur at the basin level. I do because, at least initially, I mean, otherwise you're gonna appoint, DES is gonna appoint 3 folks, from the department, a lawyer and an engineer and, an administrator, and then Georgia's gonna do the same. They're gonna meet in the room and they're gonna spitball each other, and while their job is to manage the resource, they don't live on that resource. Whereas you put folks in the room and you're looking at somebody from Elberton and somebody from Parkville and somebody from, Columbia County, on the other side of the table. With 3 folks in this room, you have a more of a vested interest. You have the ability to probably reach a compromise and to discuss practical solutions rather than, let's argue over what's going on in Jasper County. What goes on in Jasper County doesn't affect the upper city. Now, I'm not saying that we want to ignore what goes on in Jasper County, when they shouldn't ignore what goes on in Anderson County. But having basin groups, just like this group, I think you gain a lot of value by putting stakeholders in a room and talking about practical solutions, not about, which side wins. If it comes down to, one side has to win, both sides lose. That's the only truism I can think of. If somebody has to win, both sides will lose. All right, just a couple more, because you listed 3 things. I want to make a comment. Outreach and education. The state recognizes they have a role. But one of the things that I'm happy to, Catherine's with us and a few others. When we're going to be talking about outreach and communication, the state's got one role, but when it comes to local messaging and local education, our media, we share a common medium with the solicitor and with the law. We should be trying to work collaboratively with those other basins in the upstate to craft our message. We don't need Catherine to come up with one message that runs on Channel 4 and us to put a different one out that is not on the same, it's not marching with the same team. And we don't need Spartanburg to decide that they need a different message. We need a common message if we're going to do it. We're going to do messaging and education. It's hard enough when you have a common message. It's impossible if you have 5 different ones that are in conflict. Just an observation.
All right, pause real quick. I'm gonna go ahead and inject, it's like he's channeling over there, Catherine. Casey, who's the chair of the Saluda, reached out asking about coordination effort between the three upper RBCs. My inquiry was, are you speaking as holistically and comprehensively with all the members? Are you speaking of just the chairs and the vice chairs? The immediate response was, we were thinking just the chairs and the vice chairs based on the difficulty of the coordination. But they would be willing to look at expanding it. Also, I think there was some thought that getting all three groups together might be a scheduling nightmare, but hey, it is what it is. I mean, we do things like this all the time. You put a date out there, and then if you can make it, you make it, and if you can't, it's unfortunate, but at least it didn't slow down this the ability to come together and collaborate and coordinate. So I'm just going to take this opportunity real quick and get your feedback, because it was asked of me to get feedback from you all on whether or not you would be interested and supportive of having a Saluda, Broad, Upper Savannah Basin meeting sometime towards the beginning of the new year. Date to be decided, whether it be January, February, March, those types of things, or if it should be limited to the leaders to just get together and kind of see where we align and bring it back to each individual areas.
Just a first thought on that, I would encourage you to take a hybrid approach. I think inviting everybody to one meeting is probably fine. I don't think any more than one meeting is good, it's gonna work. I think everybody invited to one meeting would be not nice. But I would suggest that you pick 5 or 6 from each basin. Because if you did 5 in this room, you could have the water supply, you could have panel, you could get you wouldn't get 2 ag, you wouldn't get 3 water. Right now, when you look at, in this room, our chair and my chair and vice chair are both water. They're both water suppliers, or represented water suppliers. I would suggest that if I were in ag or if I was in environmental, I would be less comfortable with saying that's the appropriate approach. Whereas pick 4 or 5, you could probably get a good representation on this group and out of each of the basins. And I don't think 12 to 15 people meeting is that much more onerous than getting 6. I mean, and if someone's missing, they're less likely to be critical because someone has to carry the water.
So would you all like to meet as simply when we choose a date, put it out there, and y'all can tell me whether or not you're one of those interested parties, or would you like to nominate yourself as an interested party now?
I have a question.
Yes.
Do we have funding for it? And also, going beyond that, when does Clemson and Tom's contract run out? Because
12/31.
Because without Tom, none of this happens.
Well, let me shed some quick light on that. So we met last week without Tom. So I was Jill and Tom last week. I facilitated the meeting and took notes. I did not do Tom justice because I took high level. Okay. So we agreed, because we had no more funding left. We had met 25 times already. So we had exhausted Clemson's contract and CDM Smith's contract. But we, to your point, we were like, we last met in June. We need to see each other's faces again. And everybody was really excited about doing that. And so we had the meeting last week to simply touch base. And then serendipitously on the 17th, Water SC dropped their draft plan. So that became a huge topic of our meeting that wasn't originally on the agenda, which is how we kickstarted our conversation on how we're going to provide feedback. I also want to just comment on the education component, because we asked that question too, like, what does this education look like? Because we want to come up with a whole communications plan, which it's one thing to come up with the plan, it's a whole other thing to execute, and you need funding for that, and you don't have funding. And we asked him, Scott, make sure I don't speak, but Joe basically said, well, that's DES's number 1 priority next year is to educate and come up with an education plan. And we're like, next year first quarter, next year fourth quarter, like they don't have a timeline. And Joe's telling me to be patient, but at the same time, I'm like, if we if we don't meet for another 8 months, 9 months, everybody's gonna kind of forget each other and we're gonna lose all the momentum. So our discussion on the piece was, I told Joe, I was like, well, what happens if we come up with a list of things we think DES should do that are ubiquitous across the state? And then we can come up with our own list of communication components that we feel are really critical to educate people who sit in Saluda, whether it's something really specific to something we're experiencing. We're the only basin with a hydrologically impaired stretch, for example. But a lot of those things, it's hard because I can say, hey, DS, I want you to do this, but I'm not sure it'll be to the level that we want it to be. So I think we have to be really specific with that ask. And if they're like, we can't do that, or we might have to hide that out, then hopefully maybe some professional consultants who are really good at comms can get involved. Is that accurate?
Generally, I think so. I do think that it would be helpful for the student colleges to continue to communicate with EDS on what you'd like implementation, and what you'd like the next year to look like. But, and there's some uncertainty in the timing, but I think there is a willingness to provide some support next year. And we're still working on planning details for that, but feedback from y'all, I think, is critical.
Madam Chair, I think, invite everybody, because I wouldn't want Scott to have to deal with just one of us from ag. I mean, he seemed to enjoy dealing with it so much. It's a pair, and I'd hate for one of us to would die. And then you can tear it down later, but give everybody a chance. I just don't think that a narrative could do us justice, just to articulate some of the feelings on that.
Understood. All right, so there's your answer. You can bring back to the city and we've been trying, timing wise. I honestly, they were looking at January. I looked at my schedule and I kicked it all the way to like end of January, second week in February. I said I can't even entertain. Is that the type of, if we did this is February, March, are we talking? I know my world January is a little.
So I already January is realistic. We need to come up with an agenda that's worth everybody's time.
So
So
sometime late first quarter, and I'll reach out to y'all, and provide both the in-person and, I assume we would have an on-site. Ability
that'd be the goal
to listen.
if I knew that at that.
Consider the would be awesome if you could let us know.
Oh, for the date.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah, I got you, for the date, for your, to get it on your calendar,
Absolutely.
to hold that block.
You're talking March, right? Late February, March, probably.
Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, I'm saying, I'm booked there for the first week.
I don't know.
I'm telling you right now, I think if we pick December 25th, nobody's got to be. You guys have no work. Okay.
And I'd bring the Russell Stover.
Are you all in or are you not?
I'd be happy to. I'd bring the Russell Stover and we'd have a Christmas party.
Okay. And the last one I wanted to just stress, that it's a lot of bold on the drought response. All right, that may be a side parallel process. I would encourage the folks in this room to pay attention. All right. The drought response is, I think the drought response program is the key to managing water in this state. Rather than, unless we're going to start, when it comes to regulation, unless we're going to start from a blank slate, and just rewrite all the laws, the permitting and everything else. The drought response response act is the top, because all the other acts defer to it. Okay, all of them defer to it. The permitting act that we all have water, we have rights. All right, but they also say that subject to the drought response. If you're in the lower state, you have the groundwater permit, you have this right to withdraw capacity use subject to the drought response. It doesn't matter what it is, it's subject to the drought response act. So, and I would suggest that we live in this practical solutions, all right? We live in South Carolina. 5 out of 10 years, we have not been working on a plan that we care about 5 out of 10 years. Because it's wet. With plenty of water, I mean, when on the quantity side, now we get the quality, we'll be worried about every year. But on quantity side, 5 out of 10 years in South Carolina, it just doesn't matter. I mean, anybody can manage the water because there's plenty of it. All right. We don't, farmers don't have to irrigate too much. There's plenty, the lakes are full. I mean, life's good. We're blessed in South Carolina. 5 out of 10, the other 5 out of 10 years, half of them, we got to pay attention. And a couple of them, we worry. All right. When we get to really paying attention or when we have to worry, the Drought Response Act trumps everything. Okay. That's the key law. That's the key. And so I would suggest, DNR is going to try to rewrite the Drought Response Act in Congress. I don't know if it's going to be as, it's going to be consistent with what was discussed in Water SC or what needs to happen. I would just suggest that paying attention when that process starts, whether it starts at DNR or DES or whether it's, anywhere else, pay attention. That's the key.
We had a lot of discussion in here about that. Did y'all tiptoe into the fact of how that committee gets structured and the governor appointments and all that, or we got that far yet?
Mac, you've known me how long now?
It's 2 years.
How many times have you seen me tiptoe?
Well, compared to me.
Okay. All right. I'm kind of noisy when I walk. Yeah, we brought it up and it wasn't tiptoe.
What kind of feedback did you get? I mean, did anybody?
Like I said, DNR thinks they can make what they have work. My position has been a little bit less optimistic. And I also think that it needs to have more teeth. And right now, DNR can't make it have teeth. And when it comes to having the plans and having them be, I'm not interested in how often we update. The frequency of update does not matter. What matters is are they effective. An ineffective plan that you update every week is still a worthless document. A plan that has teeth in it, all right, you can write Duke did the LIP. They don't rewrite their LIP every year. They don't have to redraft. Once it was done right, all you gotta do is execute because it has teeth. Okay? That's an effective plan. And it doesn't require you to update it every year or every 5 years. What we're doing now, we have a bureaucratic exercise of updating plans with no requirement that they be effective. DNR doesn't have the regulatory ability to require a plan to be effective. DES, all the water systems and everybody who withdraws has a permit. DES does have the government. They can require it. And I would just suggest think about how do you would you rather have a process where we kill trees and to adopt plans that are ineffective, or would you rather have effective plans? So, and I think that's the key to drought.
To answer your makeup question, Mac, Casey did have a pretty robust conversation with Bob about just overlaying the same basins instead of doing how they currently do now. And her big concern is there's just general confusion. People don't know what a watershed is, and it's easier to say you live in X county. And so they've steered away from that. We do have a challenge with the committee makeup, though. We're the only basin that doesn't have representation on a drought committee. And we only have one eligible person based on the opening that's available.
Yeah, we don't know. Is Mark
You
Warren?
do, we don't.
Oh, y'all know
We
that.
don't.
Absolutely.
And that's called out very blatantly in the draft plan, and Casey was like, this isn't completely our fault, and it's not. There's only one opening right now, and we only have one person who can do it, so we've asked them if they're interested. So I think there is some conversation about the makeup of the committee, but I don't think they're strongly thinking about changing the boundaries.
There was talk about the seat, so I would ask based on whatever the opening is here as to whether or not anybody in this room and or a professional colleague could fill a gap. So the RBCs would help fill the gaps on the current. And I think that's something I was supposed to actually help with today. I hope. You might see something in an email from me that talks about the openings in our space and helping hold builders. I was remiss in that.
That's the part I would suggest that needs to be so revamped as that I wouldn't find it. Because what they're trying to do, she's looking for somebody that works for a commission of public works in Union County. And if there is no one that has a, you know, I'm making an example. If there is no commission of public works in Union County, you can't fill the seat. It's impossible. And that's the way it is up and down the basin, particularly in some of the smaller basins. And I will go one further on pushback. If you sit in and listen to the drought response committee and its adjudications, we do our adjudications almost exactly like we do right here. When I'm on the drought response committee, I think I've shared with you. I represent the upper Savannah. I make no qualifications. I will not speak for anything that happens below Edgefield. And Edgefield, I'm kind of squirrely on, and I really like when Mark is now in McCormick, because now I don't have to guess on McCormick. But I have no problem talking about, you know, Pickens, Coney, and Anderson, Abbeville County. I can talk a little bit about McCormick, but I don't go any further. I don't feel comfortable going below that. That's our basin. All right. And when we talk, that's what we talk about. And if you look at the state drought response acts, you know, when the measures are taken, there's often a sharp delineation at the Edgefield, Aiken County line. Because I'll speak for one section, and we've got folks on the lower river that represent the lower river. And even when we do the central basin, which is where the Salu's at, Greenville County, Greenville weighs in, and Spartanburg weighs in. And they often are in they take different positions because they're on different bases. Whether we say there's only 4 committees or whether we recognize there's really 8, doesn't matter. We function as 8. Because folks aren't willing to make declaration. I'm not willing to tell Buford what drought status they should be. And Buford has never ever recommended anything above like 18. And it's hard to get them to even talk about Allendale. I mean, they don't want, they're comfortable with Buford Jasper. But so I don't buy the idea that you have to be 4 because we talk in river basins. We don't. Or we talk in county. We do talk in river basins. And whether you want to continue to call counties, you can, but it's still the basins in whole river. And it's 8 basins, not just 4, particularly in the central. The central is an amalgamation. It's too big. It's got too many people to pretend that it speaks as one basin. The folks that are in Greenville they have nothing in common with yours. Okay. Yeah. The water may flow that way, but they don't have anything. And they don't vote that way on drought. And they don't regulate that way. And the Catawba is its own animal. So y'all play well in by this. And if they're independent kingdom of Catawba. But it's well managed in the great water.
Yeah, it's like, we always voice our concern because the upper part of the state basically gets 20 inches more rain than downtown Greenville, so whereas Brown, you'll see it all the time where I think it's the federal, when they do it, they look at the National Weather Service zones. But if you look at the weather service zones in Greenville, there's 3 weather zones in Greenville. There's the mountains, the central and the southern part of Greenville County. And they're different. I mean, by probably 30, 40 inches of rain a year from the southern part of the county all the way to the northern part. So, but we do, none of us, no one in Greenville, Greenville's on. Brad's for the Brad is, So, but Brad knows what's going on. He was more for us, but we talking. But
And that's what, and I would just suggest that's what needs to change. if you were to say, ignore the requirements that you be a public utility commission or a water district or whatever, and just say, nope. Each basin, y'all need to send us a list of 5 names to serve as your drought response. 2 of them need to be water providers, 1 of them needs to be ag, 1 of them needs to be this, 1 of them needs to, whatever. I think that would get you, that would get her a representative committee for each of the basins, much more effectively than pretending that. The other is that if you happen to be, my favorite one, if you happen to be a public utilities commission, right, of which there are so many in the state, we pretend that they're representative of the sector, but they're not. I mean, particularly when you get to the PD or you get to down in the Saltahatchee area, there may be only one. I mean, they represent only themselves. Whereas when it comes to water districts, there's probably tons of water districts in PD. There's not very many public utilities.
What kind of question? Isn't to do the effective part of what you're talking about? Aren't the models going to be an essential part of that? Well, running the models as far as
For doing the drought,
triggers and something.
no, they don't.
They're not.
Right now, we don't. Right now, it's a more review contest. And by that, I mean, there are certain things that we have to look at to make a declaration. None of them involve a model. They involve what are the stream flows that are reported by the state agency, what is the precipitation, that comes from Hope, state agency. We listen to the folks from agriculture who talk about where they're at, and, we listen about moisture, things like that. And they talk about, we're going to miss a hay cutting, we lost a crop or what, and it's gone. It's not coming back. And you listen to water suppliers like ourselves, and we talk about, we have adequate supplies for, where we are. And then it's just a roundtable discussion to reach a decision. Unlike when Duke does its Catawba or when it's KT, they're very clear. Water levels are here, drought response, drought triggers are here. We're going to stage 1. We're going to stage 0. And it's pretty prescriptive about when they enter a stage. Now, I think they have choices on their response for the first couple of levels, and I think that's appropriate. First couple is, we enter incipient drought once a year. But it gets dry for 2 weeks anyway. Even in a wet year, we get 2 weeks dry. And that's about what it takes to get into the incipient. It doesn't take long. It takes a while to get to extreme, but we still don't have any teeth in our drought response to handle the strength. Whereas I think if you were to ask Duke, they have some very specific triggers that they require things to be as severe and extreme. And they're not, would you please? It's more like thou shalt do.
So quick question. Discussed at great length, drought response. Is any of those comments a public comment to be made as part of the state water process? They do say review of drought response committee structure and membership for adequate representation. But what I've written down is that the RBCs or basins should provide candidates for the drought response committees for representation for each of the industry sectors to ensure a comprehensive. So that's representation. Any other comments on drought response? All right. Water reuse. We spent a lot of time on water reuse at Water SC. I think it's because it's not, nobody argued against it. But I don't think, from what I can understand, we're not quite set up in our state to allow water reuse extensively in spaces where it might want to be used. I'm not an expert in this, but it sounds like there's some insight into some of the regulatory restrictions there might be and those types of things.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to using recycled water, we'll probably, when it comes to reuse that they were pushing for, which is a greater ability to use recycled water and put it back into the groundwater. it's not, it's an issue, probably not an issue for this council. We just don't have.
That's the purple pipe.
It's purple pipe. We have wastewater plants that give you irrigation
I
water.
watched the video. I didn't know what purple pipe was. I'd say purple pipe. Okay, cool. That's what I did.
Yeah, it's don't drink this. Don't drink it.
I can drink it, but I can't.
But, it's a bigger issue for the lower state. Beaufort chapters all over, and so is Charleston. They're really interested in maximizing their, the water and being able to put it back into the ground, recharge it for aquifers. Wish we had aquifers up here, but we, here, aquifers, they'll do a foreign fan, but it won't do it fan. You know, so.
Water quality and quantity, there's a lot of, concern, and we spoke of it here. It's just, you couldn't tackle it all at one time, so it is a recommendation moving forward, as Scott puts it in the next renditions of, so it says recognize the essential connections. Water permitting. This is a big mouthful. This was one that took some work, but it's basically stating that if South Carolina regulators have the jurisdiction, they should use it. If they don't have the jurisdiction, they should ask for it, basically. So, and this is coming out of the legal committee, because the legal committee really didn't come out with a whole lot. It's, yes, you can do it, no, you can do it. It's all just the legal opinion. So I guess that's what lawyers are, is opinions, right? And so they still differed. So this basically states that they should get that ultimate authority if they don't currently have it.
And it goes back to what we were talking about and what everybody keeps bringing up. Yes, you got people getting permits to go out there and maybe a 3 million gallon month a day or whatever it is, and they don't even have a 2-inch pressure pump. So if you can't use the water, you don't have a way to use the water. That's what they are. It's supposed to be doing for years. You understand? Just put that in. You can add that in the comment. Yes, utilize authority that is there. There is some there, and let Lavender then work on the detail.
That's what the lawyers were all assigned to ask. They answered, because the department's position was that there was a thou shalt issue. You turn in a permit application and you check all the boxes, thou shalt issue. I'm not saying it's right.
No, I'm agree with you. I just did. Next time you see Tommy, tell Tommy you met me, and then him in my city was good because I've paid him before. He's good.
But I think as they go through it, the lawyers only gave them an idea of where they thought that they had authority, and then their job was to go seek it. Whether it was have the attorney general write them specific guidance saying that, no, that's what the law says. And if they didn't, if that's not what they can get, then it's to go back to the legislature and ask for changing the regulation or changing the act. So it's do what you gotta do, but start with, if everybody agrees you can do certain things, do it. All right. If there's some disagreement, go to the next level and get guidance and just keep pushing. Then you go to get what you need to manage the resource.
The question I'm going to follow to with the other recommendations, some of the we like in more items, just recognize whatever that means is not very. I mean, I get what Scott's saying, that's the next step, but that does not come through with this recommendation.
And my follow-up on that would be, my follow-up on that would be to make it a hard recommendation, set the date that you're gonna kick off.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
I understand.
It's not.
That's a nice statement.
I mean, it does. It's not.
It's kind of nebulous.
It is better to me.
Yeah, but there's no, I like that.
Plan don't work, change the plan.
It's just the last one. We shot down 4 others that were just good statements that didn't do anything. That one, water quality, there's a sizable group in the room that just insists that water quality be listed somewhere. And I have no problem. If there's something that you think can be added to that to make it actionable, I think that would be a good recommendation. And mine would be set the target date for when you're going to start, when you're.
Well, I mean, even if it does say incorporate water quality into the next revision.
Well,
Then you can have it.
Starting on this date, and then you got an action.
Then you got an actual item. Or it's accomplished, not.
Yeah, but you've got it for a different thing, but at least if you'll know you failed or you did, or you passed.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what we're doing, I have a couple. I'll just read it, it's the last paragraph of our letter. We basically felt like there was some plugins in general, so instead of trying to individually nitpick some of the verbiage, because we figured they're not gonna change it in 4 days. We said as a next step, we believe for there to be a strong statewide water plan, that an implementation plan that elevates the current drafts, chapters 7 through 9 into a guiding document needs to be developed. At a minimum, we suggest a 20-year horizon with a list of measurable actions tied to a specific timeline be completed. As part of this implementation plan development process, we would strongly encourage SCDS to review and capture the 2004 recommendations as applicable. Because that document has several that could be elevated on that particular. I could share that language if you want to rinse repeat.
That's a lot of lines.
That is-
Yeah.
Well, we're doing it as a letter rather than using the form, mostly because some of the comments we got from members were more general, and then others were like on page, this word, and so it's only a 2.5 page letter, it's not that long.
So before this is all out, I will read and then sometime this afternoon, type it up. I know Tom's over there taking notes, but I've got, and I think you're right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
There's specific things you'll.
But I do have my own about like and so for water quality, I right now recognize essential connections, water quality is not actionable. A statement such as incorporate water quality in the next rendition or otherwise is an actionable item and would be preferable, something along those lines. Okay. Right. All right. That's it for water SC recommendations. It's a blank page here. So before we jump over to all of the recommendations that came out of the RBCs, including ourselves, and looking at whether or not they're all captured, is there anything else that you all want me to include in our comments related to water SC process, where it stands, where it's going, how it's being working? Okay, all right. So once again, thank you, Tom, for typing these up.
Can you give me a letter and give me your specific language that you want to type up so I can send it to them? No, the ones you just specifically said right there. I want to have your words. So that
Okay.
we can get together.
Okay,
Make sure we can say.
okay. There's a buff on me.
All right, we're back to the PowerPoint here.
Yeah, please. So up on the screen is chapter 8, which is what you have printed out for you. And chapter 8 is what is in the state water plan, right? What is in the PowerPoint came out of our
Yeah, this is from home.
recommendations. And what we're looking to do is kind of do a kind of quality control of this water plan. Did they capture our recommendations? Did they capture them correctly? Is there something that we don't see that we want to see and want to make sure that we say, hey, this was important to us? So far, so good from my eyeballs of it. But we're going to go through kind of one by one. It's starting with the water plan recommendation comments, the planning process and recommendations. So we're starting with planning process and recommendations. It's on the slide. 8.1 is what's coming out of the state water plan. There's a lot of language up top, but they put the recommendations in boxes down below. So not to
You want to put the state water plan back there?
no, we're good. I'm just
Okay.
telling them what I'm looking at.
All right.
So I'm looking at this, and in the boxes is are the recommendations, particularly, so it's on page 8-3, recommendations for planning process. We have 8 recommendations. There are, the first box are the ones that they found came and elevated out of many RBCs. So 8-3, many RBCs. When you flip the page over to 8, not so, I don't want you looking at segment 3 saying, oh my gosh, they only put 4 and we have 9. Because when you flip the page over to 8-4, These are more of the planning process recommendations. They just weren't seen in a majority of the RBCs. And then, there's also that we're not gonna go through, but just so you know, Appendix C, which you all have, which you don't have to look at right now, but it does list out all of the recommendations and all of the RBCs and which ones were the ones that made the statements and which ones weren't, okay? All right. So at my first glance here, when I look at what we have, which is up on the screen here, one I've got checked, it says developing a strategy for maintaining membership. That's actually one of the first recommendations in this box is that DES should review the RBC membership regularly to make sure that all of the interest categories are representative. They've got a communication. I don't think this was coming out of ours, even though 6, it says regular statewide meetings. That's a bonus. It has, the next one is funding, which we have as number 6, is that the legislature should authorize recurring funding for the state water planning activities, including the river basin plans. So once again, we commented that did not come out of Water SC. There was no language about, but it is coming out of the river basin councils that we want to continue. It came actually out of 5 of them, and it came out of 6 for the coordinating regular. They just didn't think about the funding. So from what I get from that is the majority of the RBCs are supportive of what they've done and want it to continue and be part of the process. The education and outreach process is also captured here, which is our number 8, right? It kind of fits in there. I think that's coming almost straight out of ours. So are we seeing anything in R1 through 8 that we're not seeing over in their recommendations in 8.3 and 8.4? I do see even on the second page, the Upstate Inner Basin River Council, that must have come out of the Sluter or the Broad. That wasn't ours, but that is what we're speaking of previously. Yeah, the Interbasin Council, yeah, and I missed the location. I do not see. And of course, this is specific to ours, so this is when we get later on, the implementation. We were talking about increasing engagement with the Army Corps of Engineers, and I think, you know, our phase 2 recommendations and comments. Maybe we'll find that along the way, but I don't see that here, and maybe it's something that we notice that we want to either include on the local level or not. All right. So planning process recommendations, any omissions, gaps, miswordings, misrepresentation, comments otherwise? Am I good to move on to technical? Is there anybody on? I did see Mark kind of popped up on there a while ago.
Yeah, he made a comment about the media market thing that McCormick wasn't in that market, but didn't really want to stop the flow through that. Just a note that he made. We got everybody else that's not here is all on.
Okay, but no
1, 2,
comments.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
All right, they're good. I want to make sure.
They've been commenting and listening.
Okay, I want to make sure. So everybody online, make sure you slow me down or stop me or raise a hand if you need to say something. Okay. Kind of forget you're there since I don't see you. All right, so is there anything that maybe we need or can we move on to technical? No comments in the planning process? All right. What's happening? Moving on.
Get it moving.
We've got
Maybe moving a lot of meeting.
okay. So we've got, on ours, we've got 2 pages of technical and program recommendations. We got 1 through 9. And then we've got 1 through 3. So you know, that they're the same, they continue even though the numbers restart. And then you're on page 8-5 on the state water plan in their boxes down bottom. The full disclosure, I'm a little slow in my roll here because I haven't gotten this far. So I did note that the compiled data from Credible System, I believe that they did the same in this one. The one with the majority of recommendations is on page 8-5. Those that were outliers a little bit are on page 6. So I do see our number 1 was included on 8-6. I think Tanya. Hope's mesoscale. I think it came on the first one, as such automated monitoring network. I assume that's the mesoscale network that we spoke of, so that's taken care of. Stream flow gauges are also taken care of.
Which numbers? Second,
1,
2,
2,
3, 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3, done. Who's playing some other surface water quality?
Thank you, Carol. Negatives.
Oh, good, there we go, bam. Changing land use, stream flow characteristics. I think this is probably commenting on the fact that the models couldn't adjust to land use planning and changes moving forward also. Oh, the sedimentation, that did make it, I did see that on the second page, I'm pretty sure, right? Okay, impact studies of land use and water resources. Very good. Missed that, which for you.
What did Eric say?
He said water quality should also include invasive species.
Plants and stuff and like,
Somebody's talking about the very top recommendation. Water quality includes bacteria. They're getting some.
Oh, okay, alright, is that what we're, is that,
I'm assuming.
can you, Harry, were you referring to the recommendation number 1 in the state water plan that says address water quality, including bacterial features, sedimentation? You'd like to see. Is it basically this?
Yeah, hydrilla, especially in Lake Thurman, was a huge problem. I mean, we had like 600 miles of the shoreline with hydrilla, and it impacts a lot of things. Fishing, intakes for water, et cetera, et cetera. It also was causing a lot of bald eagle deaths. And there's other types of invasive plants also, but hydrilla is the biggest one.
Number 6 wasn't explicitly called out, but it's in appendix C.
Okay,
So I don't know how many recommendations that only one land council made that are excluded.
that I don't know either. So I do see in the second table that quite a few just oneers made it.
So what's the cut?
Yeah, so, do y'all refer to number 6 on the PowerPoint page and give me some feedback on whether or not we have a strong feeling that should be elevated into the plan rather than shuffled off into the appendix?
And that could be something that's local focus. No necessarily. No.
How do we feel about that? Is that a local or should that be elevated? No strong feeling?
Personally, yes, but 1 out of 50, I don't feel like it's really please go please.
All right, I've got it circled as I did another one back here for local. We'll talk about it later on in our implementation. That might be something that we focus on in our upstate interbasin council, whatever that was called.
Jill, looks like 3 and above we're putting, the 3 basins or more were.
We're put into the
We're put
major
into
one.
the-
I think Katie was asking for the secondary table that were the one-offs. I'm sorry, but her recommendation was a one-off that didn't make it into the minor recommendations, but instead got shuffled off into appendix C. So she's kind of wondering how the what elevated One River Basin's council's recommendation
I think
into
it may have
the
been,
chapter versus the appendix.
if you read that recommendation, when I read it, it is probably more applicable to a water quality issue, and water quality is not deemed to be the focus of this information. And that will be my only explanation as to why it might be the appendix item rather than the consensus item in the recommendations. I don't know. I mean, you could probably, you'd have to ask somebody at DES to, or exact guidance, but that would be my, and when I look at it, what separates it, it's, most of that's water quality related. I mean, I think we all agree with that. I'm not gonna improve quantity too much, but you know, we're really good on quality, and well, this is unfortunately not what this plan is about. I don't necessarily think that limits what the upstate basins can choose to emphasize.
I agree.
It is somewhat alluded to on the table 8.6, where it talks about support protection and habitat for food, particularly not during the corridor, but it's specific to TD basin. In this table, we kind of pick up in that,
Yeah, what does preparing versus
purchase conservation.
The last one on that page for the SLUDA, we also put on. The last bullet on the same page. 8.3 attachment.
Sorry, I'll see what we got. Would you like to, you need to request that that bullet get placed in our upper Savannah? We've only got a one-off. We got a pretty picture down below. I think I got a little extra space to fit it in there. If you want me to, I can always ask.
Yeah, I mean, I know that it's more quality, so I don't have a huge strong feeling about it, but I do feel like if other basins are specifically calling out, then it would perhaps wording,
So
only for consistency throughout river basins.
All right, I'm saying on page 8-10, you include recommendation on, I'm just gonna say conservation properties. No.
It might just be for lack of, I'm just looking for inconsistencies throughout the rest of it. It may just be the way we put too much verbiage in there, but I find it interesting that, under communication, the Savannah RDC was where we should coordinate the Coastal Georgia Regional Council. That sounds like something new for Jasper asked for. And at the same, and that got put into broad consensus, and then our recommendation, we increase coordination planning with Georgia EPD on the Savannah resource water issues remains on the upper Savannah issues. So just, there's probably a few, probably more than a few of those inconsistencies. There's probably a rhyme to it, and I just don't know the name. I haven't seen it.
Also, in our letter, we call out, every time they use the phrase recommendations with broad RBC support, they're talking about majority or major, and it's confusing that there is a broad RBC, so we've asked them to change the word, because I don't know about you.
Oh, that's funny.
I was like, what are we talking about here?
Is it capitalized or not?
Yeah, it is capitalized, so it's extra confusing, so we've already called that.
So, matter is the ball. I think.
Yeah, well, that's what it like at some point.
Is y'all relevant?
I don't think our phase 2 made it. Should I circle that as local? Yeah, number 8 of our recommendations, that's similar to number 4 of our planning process with engage with the Army Corps of Engineers. On phase 2, it's Army Corps of Engineers was another, I assume it's an appendix C. And we can address it, do we address it locally? Is that, I know we haven't had.
I wouldn't even think, I wouldn't think that would make it.
Okay.
I would think that isn't completely local.
Quick comment on the phase 2. I mean, they don't go into detail and schedule, but my concern is if you don't start thinking about that because of cost sharing and everything else, it'll last for years before you ever get it started. It's one of those things that should start thinking about the cost aspects in the next calendar year. Between the state's fiscal years and the federal government, it also kind of plays into drought too. I think it's something that does need to get started next year, or at least start the discussion.
So my slight ignorance, my apologies, not a state issue, a local issue. Harry stating it needs state monies, which would make the state issue.
I think it's a local issue. Does it need state money? Yes, but I mean, if you were to ask, this is broad consensus. All right. Does anyone in any basin other than the upper Savannah care about the stream? I mean, we care about it, but it doesn't matter to anyone else in the state. It is a basin issue, not a state issue.
It's a double basin issue because you got lower Savannah.
The lower
As
Savannah.
well as us.
Huh?
I say it's it's all up and it's a 2 basin issue, plus it's an interstate issue.
That's what I was saying on that, when you start talking about what Georgia may or may not do. If, yeah, it puts it bigger, our bases become more important, but Georgia might do something on the other side of things.
Oh, I don't disagree, but it doesn't, in my book, it doesn't change the fact that it's, when it comes down to how you manage the river, that was a basin issue. Now, I think it's unlikely we're gonna get anything more than nodding, okay, from out of the Catherine for salute support, like that, whatever, sure. So.
Well, that leads to a question.
I guess it's a definition of what I understand what you're saying, but the problem is it's not something we can initiate by ourselves.
No,
we can't commit state money.
No, I agree 100%. We need their support, but it is, this basin needs their support versus, does it fit in the, recommend, because you gotta realize, we're not looking at the state recommendations. We're looking at the basin plan. That says River Basin Council recommendations. Does it affect multiple basins, or is it consistent with multiple basins, or is it just our basin? That doesn't mean we don't need the state to act, because we're in chapter 8. Look at the title says River Basin Council recommendations, not state recommendations. The state should have an overarching policy of supporting each of the local basins. That should be the coverage you need to get what you're looking for, which is funding and and agency support. That should be a state level finding. We shouldn't be pushing individual initiatives onto the state other than operating under that general support the local basins.
I guess I don't necessarily disagree with it. My only point is we as an individual basin, and let's include the lower Savannah basin also, how do you initiate? We can't really call a meeting with Georgia and start discussing funding schedule, what we want to include without getting the state involved, DES and whatnot. I mean, how do you initiate it without the state?
Would you like me to do the same as I did with Katie's, Katie's recommendation, but the recommendation that originated from Katie in regards to land use conservation for your Army Corps of Engineers? It'll also cover the other one that I circled, that was planning process. Because it said increase engagement with Army Corps of Engineers, so I can combine those two recommendations from us and ask DES to include it on page 810 that's under ours specifically to increase engagement with US Army Corps of Engineers, including requesting for the cost sharing completion of phase 2. We good with that?
Yeah, that would be fine with me.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yes, so this table it says examples of other RBC policy, regulatory, and legislative recommendations. Table 6. So I guess we both of those qualify under that. Because I guess my recommendation isn't necessarily in that tab.
I don't think, actually, our recommendation might be to update the label for 8-6, because when I read a lot of these, I don't think are necessarily policy, regulatory, and legislative. Yeah. All right. All right, so we're on technical. Back. Let me get down to number 9. This was this came out of Tanya a couple of times. I know it was kind of like, hey, so there's folks that aren't on public water. How are they affected by all of this? And to understand the impacts for those on private commercial wells.
I think, other than having the USGS complete the groundwater model, that's probably the way the state's gonna address it. But I have a feeling they're gonna determine that groundwater, wells, the groundwater in the upper Savannah or below this level of significance. And they're probably not gonna get all the groundwater model in the upper Savannah. And it's unlikely you're gonna get, I think they're just gonna find it to be below the levels. And that was the position I had when it was first brought up.
And when you start talking about, okay, how you gonna study, you talk about private well.
Yeah.
How you gonna go out there, because that, yes, unfortunately, that raises a red flag with some of us.
But I mean, I don't think, I think you could pump at your heart's desire, and I don't think your wells have enough capacity to influence the basin in a significant fashion. I don't think you can.
Yeah, so from this perspective, it's right, it's really not it's not something significant enough to worry about in the basin plan. The deeper there, they'll go there another day, hopefully not, but then you get to talk about some of yours, when we talk about ownership of water, and y'all talk about annexation and forcing people on, and we're getting into a whole different area there, but it's a significant issue, but it's another issue, I get.
But if I remember correctly, we were talking about this one, it was the fact that, okay, so what happens if all the wells in the update dry up? What effect does that have on the service? With customers now having to get service water as we can.
Okay,
That was the way it was brought, that's the way I remember. And they had the whole conversation about, well, how many wells are there in northern Pickens County? That were residential wells, that how many people would have to go on to, and to be honest with you, it's probably very easy. I mean, that's,
I know during the 2008 drought.
Yeah.
We're in the heartland right here where we had a run on the number of folks that were wanting to tie into M and I water. Because their farm wells were becoming less reliable. And we've done it, Starla had quite a few, in that area. This is one of the few areas where groundwater is even remotely available. You know, it's just not, further down, y'all may have groundwater wells, but they're probably not much more than the farmhouse, maybe
Oh,
the.
yeah, the old hand dug stuff, that's gone by the wayside. You know, much what they've been reliable.
Not a very significant impact on the resource base. If they were added to the M and I supply, probably not a very significant impact to it. But I think the state has it covered when they say they're gonna have to do this QS models, groundwater models completed. I just wouldn't bet the farm that they're going to incorporate upper land and stuff.
There's currently no plan to
Huh?
develop a groundwater model for the upstate area. It's all in the plan.
Yeah, I wouldn't think you'd come above the fall line.
We don't anticipate going above the fall.
Huh?
We don't anticipate going above the.
Yeah, I started to say, I mean, you know, we have monitoring wells above the fall line, but you know, they're nice, but.
Okay. So I think we've got through 1 through 9. The next page starts again 1 through 3, but still technical and program recommendations. They are captured, from what I can tell, on not in the majority with broad support, lowercase b, but on the other an 8-6 underneath technical studies about well, other technical studies. It's a little bit financial, but it's on there identifying the financial impacts and encouraging communicating the results to local governments to demonstrate the value of our paying offers. It doesn't capture all of our language. It's come from another RBC as well. We kind of squish together. Oh, it is our number 2. I'm on number 1. Sorry, I jumped down to number 2, and that verbatim our language for the technical studies. Our number 1. Okay. And then encourage the building permitting process for applicable to prior developers work with water and wastewater utilities to ensure adequate availability and capacity. I hope they do that. It was like too crazy.
Well, they don't.
That's something that belongs somewhere. Yay, nay. Still thinking about it?
Where would you put it?
I don't know.
That's just when you get into the building permit process,
Yeah.
you start to know it, then you're in the fountain. Rather than what,
And I'm not sure how actionable, as we used to ask before, encouraging is.
yeah. Yeah.
Leave it be. Are we gonna circle that as a local? Because that would be kind of a local. Would be a local.
County councils, you gotta do it.
Okay. Well, should be part of our budget.
That's the matter.
Give us a task, what you do?
Good luck.
All right, so are there any other, we're moving on from here. That's the last of our technical recommendations. I'm not gonna read through all of the other technical recommendations. Do you all have any questions, comments, or otherwise on maybe some recommendations made by others that are supportive, we don't agree with, or anything of the like? Right. Policy, regulatory, and legislative recommendations. Now we're on the draft, page 8-7. We have 7 recommendations summarized by Tom that came out of ourselves, our group here. Okay, number 1's covered in their box number 1. It was supported by 7 of the RBCs. It's important to note, that's a big one. Okay, number 2, next one. Got
So I do,
that too.
you know, use their food cover.
Is there a written safety?
I think all these should be moving.
To the improved current laws one. Step right here. Number 3, the
State
RBC.
plans water adopt the state into land uses.
Oh, yeah, again. I was
Water
saying,
resources, water.
I see a plan.
I copied that from our plan, so that must be a typo.
What did we
I
need?
did include them.
Okay.
I assume it's that, we're recommending that the legislature recognize this plan on a statewide level and adopt it as an official resource. Is that the guiding document? I don't even know what adopting it really looks like, or if that's just a.
You want to pull it up to make sure? Maybe I did copy it. If you want to pull it up, I'll got it. I'll just leave it.
The state plan. The prior state water plans that have been completed by the department have just been announced to be completed, and they've been put on the bookshelf. They have not been anything that the legislature was ever asked to endorse. The purpose of the endorsement is if you endorse all the recommendations in it, there's the hope that you also endorse or at least acknowledge that in order to accomplish the plan, and in many places, the plan actually states that the legislature should help fund these things.
That's a typo on that slide.
That's the rationale for asking the legislature to adopt it. Because once it becomes their plan, rather than it being, well, thank you for your plan. Well, they get lots of things that are unsolicited, they don't adopt, and they don't necessarily feel the obligation to continue to support it. We're asking them to read it, adopt it, and make it theirs, because it says annual funding. That's what we're depending on. That's really their role, is to say, we agree that these things need to be done to manage the resources of the state. And we agree that our role is to fund it and to support the interstate and, communications like we're coming from Savannah. And there's certain things that they would be obligated to bring to the table if they adopt it. If they don't, then it's like, well, thank you. And I don't think this group would like to be written off with a simple thing.
They'll still got to put their DES.
Huh?
DES is the gatekeeper.
DES is the gatekeeper, but right now, the previous plan, if we look back to the 2005 plan, it has like a billion recommendations. A lot of them are really good.
Exactly.
Okay, the state legislature never adopted. Okay, so they have been, rather than progressively saying, we're working through these recommendations that we adopted. DHEC had to come back and say, and DNR had to come back and say, we need you to do this, one thing. And then they fight a brand new battle on every initiative, rather than say, it's in the plan you approve, it's in your plan. All right, then it's just one, it's one hurdle passed. You don't have to convince them that it's in their best interest, because no, you said it was, you adopted it.
So is that recommendation captured in table 8.5?
Which one's name?
Table 8
Yeah.
-5. So I don't see anywhere where it says we recommend the legislature approve and adopt the city law.
I don't see it anywhere. So we would like to recommend that that bullet, number 3, for policy, legislative, and regulatory recommendations. Would you like it to be recommended that it makes it to the recommendations with broad support? Obviously, that means it would have had to come from another RBC as well, I believe. If I'm following.
I think that, and I'll go one further. I think, recommendation I would have is to write a letter and have the governor recommend.
I agree with Scott.
In place. Huh?
He agrees with you.
I agree. And whatever the highest thing we can put on, this is, to me, the most critical thing that could be done.
And one would think that, like you say, one would think that he would recommend that since he's doing it.
You kick the process off. I think asking him, when we go, and I'm not against putting it in our recommendation that even if the governor doesn't do it, but I would hope that we would, we have a chance to talk to the governor in a week, when we present the plan. The idea that we would be honored if he would present it or offer it to the legislature for approval. Because it represents the work that he asked to be done, and it represents the best interest of the state going forward. And we just think that would be the next step.
Tell if you wanted to put it in the state address this year. Tell if you wanted to put it in the state address this year.
I don't care what it puts, it just ask for it. I mean, because he has a quick way to get it put on, he can get it on an agenda.
All right, quick question. I know that things have been wordsmithed up the wazoo in the water SC process based on the fact that you don't tell legislature what to do. I feel it's probably the same in the governor's world. So how do I phrase this? Are we putting this as a?
In the recommendation, I would say that we recommend that the legislation in the state of South Carolina adopt the provisions of this plan and continue and provide continued support for it.
So is what's up there on number 3, it just stating that recommendation needs to be.
I would go one further and say that you would ask them to continue for continual support.
Not necessarily funding, support. Okay. Because this is our recommendation that's written. Ish. Okay.
Yeah, it was a typo on my part. It's in the plan normally. It's just vote on, adopt the state water demand. That S water resources, I think, was a carryover from the next.
Oh, okay. So
I pulled up the plan and it's fine in the plan. It's my mistake.
See it.
So it's good in the plan. It's just not slightly. That was just better.
I don't even know if I see it in appendix B, and I might have missed it.
So it's been missing overall, and we believe it should be in the formal main broad with the lowercase b, even if it's just coming from us all.
It's in there,
You see it?
the point down.
Page 4. Oh,
Appendices, regulatory alignment and state water plan.
All right, so then is the recommendation that we're asking them that it's important enough to elevate out of appendix C, and then they'll do with it as they want.
Well, it's on here too.
Where's on
The water withdrawal permitting process should specifically assess permit applications, alignment of river basin plan and/or the legislatively approved state water plan.
Oh, I got hidden, but stuck in there. Okay, where?
Yeah. Regulatory alignment and state water plan. On 8-7 of the draft plan. That's exactly right.
It's assumed it'll be.
Okay, all right. Thank you for hunting that out.
But the recommendation is for the legislation to approve it. They don't have to approve it. This implies that they
Yeah, it's done. It assumes they did it.
It's now.
Anybody in 2005?
And in appendix C, is it as we stated? Is it? What page did you find? Oh, there's no numbers on it.
On what the, I
On
would say
table C,
it was the fifth one. It's the same. It follows this page. Back.
Last page. Last page, second full bottom, yeah.
okay. One for permitting process, the least less than much. Well, that's, okay, so once again, it doesn't state it, all right, so from what I can tell, they've jumped to, it's been adopted with skipping to the recommendation that it be adopted, so we're gonna bring to the attention that the recommendation that the legislature approve and adopt the plan and continued support should come before.
I'm trying to see if it's under the other, like, section 7 or something where they say they have to adopt.
Okay.
Because you remember that was their recommendation that be made.
So I'm gonna have to wordsmith this, obviously. I'll try really hard to put this together this afternoon so that you all can tell me where I've made errors in expressing your expressions. But I've got the legislature approved, we want this as it's written, that the legislature approve and adopt state water plan and continue support. All recommendations that we see currently jumps to language about a legislatively approved plan, making the adoption process an assumption rather than a recommendation. All right, so we've got pass number 3. Number 4 is coordination and planning. We have found that along the way, yes? Okay.
Number 5 is what?
Okay, so specific to Savannah. Okay, all right. All right. Support and fund education process, that's there. This RBC recommends a part of the planning process was actually captured in the technical recommendations rather than policy legislative, so it's I saw it, table 8.5. I think we were the two places that put that.
Page 816.
That's a check. Grant program established support implementation and actions. So got that? Okay. Right. That's it for our recommendations. Obviously, there's some here that did not come from us. Take a moment to look at them. Let me know if you have any angst or disagreement.
While we're on the subject,
Yes.
I do have to say that I do oppose the permit and registration that the current, where it says the current law allows surface water or agricultural surface water users and all groundwater. It pretty much is saying that it wants to revoke registrations and strictly do permits. I hate to call it out, but it seems like this is the only place in the entire water plan where it points out a single interest group that they need to have something changed. And I also feel that if surface water agricultural users were represented at Water SC, I feel like it would have been argued a little harder before it was put in here.
Once again, we didn't recommend any RVC recommendations. So Water SC didn't do
You didn't
anything.
choose anything.
Nothing, none,
Okay.
zero.
So-
We didn't see them.
And then in appendix C, that recommendation was from Broad, Petawatery, Banty, and then Edisto had majority of.
Yeah. I did see that. I just wanted to say, just make my statement that I opposed it being in there.
Well, I think one thing too, to what you're saying, like you and I've been talking about, I mean, it does now look like we're going to maybe go back and let's look a little bit more detail legally as to what it said, because that's where a lot of the sticking points come from.
I think, the point that you brought up on ag with the registration, I think when they talk about doing away with registrations and putting you in the permanent, I may have missed this, but every time I've heard this discussion, the idea is to put ag under a permit, right? But the permit will be not identical to the permit that everybody else has. It'll have all the same kind of things, which I'm still trying to figure out. If you're gonna have, it's gonna have all the same benefits of a registration. Why are we gonna go to the effort to change the law to get to the same point? I mean, because they're saying that you're gonna get it when I'm left with, I don't understand why they put the exercise. And I think in discussions at Water SC, there is the recognition. And I'm gonna oversimplify this, and if I do, you correct me. That, ag really only needs water when we're in the first two stages.
Absolutely.
Okay, when during the 5 years when it's wet, you don't want to buy water, you don't want to pump water because you don't need it, and it's just cost, and you don't want to spend it. So it's unimportant. During the first two stages of drought, you want water, which is when we're asking everybody else to cut back. But at the same time, we're still, as I say, we're addicted. As you can tell, I'm addicted to food. I appreciate what you do. Y'all are good pushers. You're one of the best providers I've ever had. And I want you to stay in business. At the same time, once we hit severe and extreme drought, all right, water use is not really as big of an issue for the ag community if you don't own trees or livestock. Because if you have a row crop, it's dead. You can't afford the water to put water on during an extreme drought. The crop's gone. You're back on insurance. I mean, I hate to. That's my perspective from where I'm at. And if I messed it up,
No, you're not messing up. Most of you're right about it. I mean, unless the guy's in the that's a different world, in the synthetic world where you can irrigate.
Well, yeah. But even then, you're only going to irrigate what makes sense.
Right.
You're not going to continue to try to grow the most water intensive crop during the extreme drought. It won't be profitable. I mean, even if you have the irrigation, it's like just take the insurance thing.
Well, anyway, that's a good.
Well, I understand. I mean, there's vegetable crops that make sense of any time. I get it. But by and large, the last two stages of drought is not the big deal. The first two stages are when you need protection. That's when it's really, really critical that you take water when we're asking the rest of the state to cut back. When we go into moderate drought, we should be asking people to conserve. That's exactly when you're going to use the most water.
Absolutely.
And I don't look at
Everybody doesn't fit the same model.
no. Yeah.
That's every industry is different. Everything you do is different. The good thing about what he's saying, I see what he's saying and I agree. The best thing I heard when I looked at the videos is the fact that Jetwater SC did, as we've been talking about earlier, they got legal counsel involved and somebody's going to actually look at what we've got, it seems like. And let's get this right so the people that do the regulating will have the right interpretation. Because unfortunately, sometimes when you get into interpreting, the personal opinion and personal clouds the issue of what actually is on the paper.
I agree with that. I also would caution that some of the discussions at Water SC that we talked about but didn't make it any further were requirements that would you want someone to dictate your crop choice in a drought? Okay.
But we also don't know it's a drought when it's crop.
No, well, you might. I mean, we enter 2 to 3 years drought, and
Most of the time.
you start even in the prior year, you start with the hopes it's going to rain.
Oh, absolutely.
Every dry when you plant, you're still praying for rain.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're the most optimistic people I've ever met in my life. If you're a pessimist, you don't go in the door.
No.
Go for it. Okay? So I would just suggest that right now, I don't think it's going to gain traction to do away with registrations. I think what's going to gain traction is to try to get a legal understanding of what is necessary for it to be a legal registration. Okay,
And that's
and
what-
there may be some efforts, just like on permits, there may be some efforts to fight for this, to allow the state to claw back things that are deemed to be illegal or stranded assets.
And that's what we've been talking about.
So-
From the beginning of this is we want the regulation to be able to do what.
If someone's asked for 3 million gallons of water a day without the ability to withdraw it, that might be one where that registration would have to be able to be rescinded.
I completely.
All right. At the same time, if you have a water intake for a water provider or an industry that you were grandfathered 1 trillion gallons of water and you don't take it,
Oh,
there should be ability to pull that back. Right now, the laws, people do not believe that those laws is a possibility. And I would suggest that neither of those situations, a fraudulent acquisition of a registration or the stranding of water resources for industry or for water that aren't being used, that could be used more beneficially for the state, is in the best interest of the state or anybody in the state, regardless of your state. And my favorite examples are, as you know, you've got the ag folks down the Edisto who just file up registration, lock up all the water, not the best interest of the state.
Don't blame all the ag folks, there's plenty of non-ag guys down.
Well, no, they use it, I'm just saying, they use the ag registration.
Right, okay.
They use that vehicle. They're not
But they're not
ag.
No.
Okay, that's the point, but they use the ag registration approach to get the water.
And the state allowed it.
All right, and at the same time, there are stranded assets on the water side. And my favorite one right now, and Alan may shoot me in the head for saying it, is Savannah Riverside. I mean, they set it up to fire more nuclear plants and Ducoms right now. And as far as I know, I don't think they're gonna build one. So that said, having them have the ability to, having a permit for all that locks up water for the rest of the river. Because we have to leave it in the river for them to not use. That seems, and they're just one example. And there's plenty of them that are out there, water and ag, that need to be addressed. And the department needs to be given the ability to manage the resources that we have to the betterment of the state. Now, and whether does it make people uncomfortable because your permit's not gold? Yeah, a little bit. Does it make farmers a little bit uncertain because a registration could be lifted? Yeah, probably does. That doesn't, at some point, you've got to trust that the folks that are at the state are going to actually be managing.
That's the best statement.
The best thing, the video I learned when y'all had recommendations one day when you was at the Phillips Center, you improve the relationship between the agricultural industry and the regulators, because there seems to be a lot of distrust there. It took y'all boys 2 years to figure that out.
all right. We are at 12:10. We're supposed to adjourn at 1 and have lunch and have 2 more things. So we're a little, we're a little behind schedule, but before we adjourn, I need to understand where that conversation ended. Are we good? Are we good not making comments since this did not come from us? You would like to comment? Will you write?
That we yes, I will, during lunch, all right. I have that.
All right, and it'll go into our formal comments and you all can provide me feedback. And I might even do a little verbal before we adjourn, so y'all can correct me, but there's lunch served. It might be really short though. I apologize. I'm a slow eater, so I really apologize to myself.
Tell the group this, you'll have the board of loss. Index show Facebook page of Calhoun Falls, and I quote, "Trained personnel assisted by the South Carolina Rural Water Association will be checking every water meter in town. Rural Water Association and staff will verify the meter identification numbers, confirm serial records, and record current readings to ensure each device is operating properly." I'm gonna go along with watch on several of those streets that your personnel will be going.
Feel free, feel free. We'll train you up and you can flip. We call
No, I was gonna watch.
flipping lids, baby, flipping lids. Flipping lids.
Page the front page, you have help of your success.
Joe, one thing, I know we're not covering this section here, but you need to look at section 9 too. Which is the, what's next, I guess, is the best term for it. Because there is a statement in there, RBCs will retain their broad composition, have a continuous long-term role in the water planning and implementing recommendations. These groups will continue to meet periodically, pursue river basin plan implementation activities, and discuss evolving needs. With the updated state water plan, SCDES will assist with coordinating and facilitating RBC's meetings frequency and meetings to be flexible and adaptable to meet needs. So that's in the, I call it what's next, but it's got other.
Like the last, is 9 the last chapter?
Nah, well, yeah, well, it's all the references, but.
Okay, yeah, 9's the last chapter.
Chapter with need.
All right, very good. So that put our minds at ease a little bit about whether or not we will continue forth moving forward. All right.
Let me just ask one question for you. Including the folks online, if you're still there,
They are.
how many are willing to continue on into the second iteration? How many need to be, how many does Jill have to find replacements for?
We do have that, as our next,
That's the next agenda item.
and that's after lunch.
Well, think that.
Scott, just because you're retired, don't mean you get slack.
I can't keep up. No, absolutely. I mean, I.
Slow down.
Really.
All right, we're gonna pause for, is the lunch here, Jill, you know?
Sorry,
Lunch in there?
lunch is here.
Or you're gonna like break for 15, then we get it, come back, eat while we move on, right? All right, 15 minutes.
I don't. I like.
We call it that, yeah.
I like driving. Still all there. We should bet.
And what do you, I could do that.
So it
I'm
wasn't
done.
trashed yet.
Thank you. I like that. Thank you.
Okay.
Tag team, I appreciate it.
So we're gonna, I'm gonna take over Jill so she can eat. We're gonna get started with the what Scott brought up earlier with the review of the current membership and when their terms expire.
Well, the statewide.
And I updated this after our March meeting when people were asked if they would stay on, so they'd be up for 3 more years, so that's reflected in these dates. Because there were some that were supposed to expire 2025.
Now Jill and I both, I believe, were supposed to expire in 2025 because we were chair and co-chair. So it went in 3 years. But all that, you got switched to 3 years.
We are up to, at 26.
I mean, 7 years. I might have to get the read that, 'cause I can't.
I know, it's on the
You have a
sheet.
handout?
Yeah, I got it. I'll pull it out.
I did have to do the same thing.
Okay, so. All right, so those that are up this coming. Did we do 20? So we already up to 20.
So I already re-up
Okay.
the folks, and they would be the 2028 folks. Those
So,
are the 3-year extensions.
so the 26 ones that will be up are Jill. Are you re-upping? Okay, just want to make sure. Dan Murph,
He's online. Dan, are you planning on re-upping next year for 3 more years?
these are 3-year terms now.
Yeah, every subsequent one is new, so it keeps the staggered approach, so everyone is meeting at the same time. No, he's not responding, so he may not be at his computer.
Okay. Tanya?
Right next to you, that.
Okay, thank you. The other Tanya, she's not online.
Not online, but I would be surprised if she said no.
Okay. John Haynes? He's on. Oh, you're the future, are you there?
Are you planning on re-upping?
Are you staying on for 3 more years? Okay. Katie? Oh, wait, you're 28, so you're on already. Sorry.
You agreed in March to extend the. Sorry.
Then it looks like I'm the last one and I am staying on, so.
All right, we just need to get clarity from Tanya. We maybe think.
Do we have any on your roster that are? Do we have any vacancies?
That aren't, yeah, that aren't making enough meetings. I mean, that's the only. Did you cover Billy?
Well, that's one thing, Don, you were gonna talk to him about this position.
I did,
We
but
haven't
I
had.
can't get to him. I don't, he just doesn't seem to be. I don't know why he's not responding,
Okay,
but, as near as I can tell, he's. Well, I haven't. I don't know what to say, if I haven't spoken.
okay.
This is it. I can do it. I'm in the same situation he's in about power squad, US power squad membership in this company. I can represent recreational fairly well. I know we do it if it takes me to need to.
Okay, well, then that would, because you need to talk to Scott about an application and all that.
Well, I've done that.
Yeah.
I've already taken care of that.
Okay. So is it gonna be you as our member moving forward?
That'd be fine with me.
All right, Scott? Is that approved? Yeah.
I'm trying to remember, did you send me your application?
I did, you said that I would.
Sorry, I haven't talked to you guys. We'll work on it.
Okay, well, we'll work on it, whatever it's out of it.
No, that, that should be fun.
Do also. I'll leave you on.
And that was already taken care of as far as the 3 years, so if you do replace them, it's already 3 years, so that's pretty easy to take care of. Let's figure out who's gonna do the first one. All right,
I think that covers that topic. The 7th topic on the agenda is the implementation discussion.
and these are just the objectives. I can pull up the plan if you wanna look at it more in depth. I was gonna copy the piece of all that in the slides, so. Can we pull that up now?
Yeah.
All right. All right, so those are the 6 objectives on your slides, and then here's objective 1. Just pretty wordy.
Improve water efficiency, to conserve water resources.
Maybe it's further down, sorry.
No, that's pretty far use efficiency, that would. I'm actually right there. Okay, I have them. So the first one was improve water use efficiency to conserve water resources. We had 2. I went down to the metrics.
You know where?
I went down to,
Further down.
yeah, it's on page 13. I don't see. It's just the metrics there. It tells us what we had discussed as our metrics.
Let's see.
Well, not to what's the page after page? It's on the main plan, 1019. So. Looks like it's a weird page.
Good section.
There he is, right there. Well,
There.
there he is. So this is from the original meeting. We had some metrics that we put on each of these. So improve water use efficiency to conserve water resources. And the first metric was have water utilities establish a baseline water loss leak detection measure and improvements over, as seen over 5 years of subsequent surveys. And that's doing sanitary surveys that DES runs, because they do look at your water, they do some water loss, and see your water loss for that. So that was just to establish the baseline of 5 years. Because it does, I mean, I can speak for Creamer Waters, we vary between 10 and 14% a year. But it's not really called water loss anymore, it's unaccounted for water, or non-revenue unaccounted for water. It has to do with just, when you have 3,000 miles of leaky pipes, 3,000 miles of pipes, they all have some little bit of leak in them. So, but it's just kind of baselining that. There are some systems that are at 40% water loss, believe it or not. So I guess so is everybody still good with that as a metric to try to get with? I mean, I guess we got to go through DES for that. The water could give us that information, or could get that information. This is to improve water efficiency. And then the other one was funding opportunities to identify and use for implementing conservation strategies. So that was probably a little trickier to find ways. I know from our standpoint and from Duke, I mean, we get, we've had the call about 2 weeks ago about starting to put together stuff for low inflow protocol 1. So I mean, those of us who are on the Duke reservoirs are kind of have to do that originally without funding. I mean, we coordinate basically the press release comes from them. Once in a while, it'll quote one or multiple of the agencies involved, CEO in there, and then it gets released to our EIOs, so through our public information of that person. So, but I mean, that was kind of broad in finding funding opportunities to do conservation outreach, I guess.
Missed the bus.
Which was?
What's that?
Say that again, Cole.
Sorry, I accidentally unmuted. My
Oh,
bad.
you're good.
So, but then with that funding opportunity, you drop in number two there, which is to communicate, coordinate, and promote funding and recommendations from the River Basin Plan. So, I guess this kind of, and Jill alluded to it in this meeting, is that we didn't want to wait for the plan to become official. And then because it says within 1 year to look at an engagement plan I mean, I guess it's looking at the big River Basin Plan, because there are some things that are spelled out, educational in there. And I guess we would support DES's on a local level. I'm guessing meeting on a local level, meeting on a basin level. Once the plan is approved.
So keep in mind and as we're going through these, I mean, one of the main reasons to discuss these now is where are we waiting and where do we not have to wait? Where we might have some action on a local level that we're not sitting here waiting for a finalization. So if there are things that we can find alternate funding, there's just partnerships that can establish that can start looking at maybe some sort of outreach, when we talk about the whole meeting as a group, getting on board with maybe the Saluta's planning, and we do it kind of comprehensively and work together. When we talk about the prioritization of parcels and such, there might be opportunity where Katie's group is sharing with us projects that she might need broad support, whether it be just letters of support or maybe some in-kind man hours. I know there's things like that that's involved. So just think when we're thinking implementation, a lot of this, we really do have to wait for the state water plan, but identify when we can, where we can start talking and collaborating and just planning for that opportunity, or if there's opportunities in the here and now.
That's what, and to add on to that though, is that we do not have, from what I gather, we don't have the authority to do anything outside of the state law once it's implemented. I mean, we can expand on it, but we can't just say, oh, we're going to do this. As long as it doesn't go against the state law. That's better wording.
I guess I put on my other professional hat when I talk about it. I guess so. Full disclosure, when I talk about implementation, I'm taking really almost my chair of the RBC hat off. And I'm putting on my executive director of rural water. I'm looking at Katie and say, how can we move this forward? And that would be working out of that side of the RBC process, but it would be furthering the implementation. So I don't know if that's proper or not, but that's where my brain is going.
Yeah.
We're doing the same thing. We're trying to talk about what can we do while we wait, basically. But I really like the idea of maybe we need to make a big topic of our upstate coalition conversation, like what would we do together?
Together's easier. Yeah. If there's overlap in what it is that we're looking to accomplish.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's right. So going out, and right now we're just, with all these, we're not going to come up with the answers today. Because you could have said we didn't leave a whole ton of time to do it, but we just wanted to bring it up to everybody's. These are what we're doing, and these are in the plan. If you can go in deeper up above, but this is the kind of the summary of it. Number 3 was improved technical understanding of water resource management issues. We talked about the water quality issues that are going to be, some of them are already identified in our basin. But some of them will basically come out in the future development as the plan develops in the future. Impact of potential future land use changes on water quality and water quantity and stream flow characteristics. Areas of land conservation to develop and apply. This has to do with with like nature conservancies and stuff like that. We, buy land and take it off the market so that it's preserved. How we can help them, give them areas. Financial impacts of sedimentation on reservoirs and water resources is identified. That was one of our clear, for instance, right now, Helene, we just Greenville Water just completed. We did a bathymetric study. We do about every 10 years. We did one 2 years ago, we just did another one because of the impacts of Helene. We're trying to see what that is. But I know when we were talking about this, we were talking about the Army correlates in their studies to see what their capacities were, but so we need to communicate that onto our local governments. I mean, I know we do because with respect to our two reservoirs, the mayor of Greenville and one of the councilmen are on the board, so they will know what's going on with bathymetric and, you know, what we need to do. The next one is it's kind of getting important now. USGS stream flow gauges in the basin are maintaining increases. And it's as if DES recommends as such, and I believe it was recommended in the plan itself to enhance the data collection in certain areas. River Water is maintaining we're going to maintain our cooperation with USGS, but there is a concern out there with
21.
It's trying to get up 3D, yeah, I'm all the way up top. Well, no, went down some 3D. No, 3D. Part of the problems of that is that budget cuts at USGS right now. That we're working with them. We actually looked at taking the stream flow gauges over on our own. But as of right now, we're staying with USGS. But you know, there is some concern, especially I think they closed the Georgia office with stream flow. Sure. They're consolidated two of their offices with respect to stream flows. And what the status got behind you, I was asking him if he, but because that's what we had heard. We're going through a bunch of this right now because we're dealing with FEMA with damage up at a reservoir. So
I'm curious, what was the result of the mathematics stuff?
we haven't gotten it back yet. We just did 2 weeks. We had to wait for the reservoirs to go up a little bit.
Right.
With the rainfall we had the last little bit of rainfall we had the last couple of weeks. They just finished it last week, the reservoir. And then metric 3E, there were 3, A, B, C, D, E. All data necessary to support implementation action in future areas of study is accessible and made available to the RBC and the public. So basically, all this stuff is going to be out there, and at some point you may have to, you know, a lot of it is public knowledge already, but it may be from our standpoint, directing people on where to find it. Protect water resources, number 4. The primary sources of sediment loading to reservoirs are identified. Having self-explanatory. Measurements are put in place by local governments to prevent sediment loading to the reservoir. So that's due to stormwater improvements. Improved drought management. 100% of public supplier drought management plans are updated within the last 5 years and submitted to SCO for review. Scott alluded, I'm not going to go into that. We'll Scott talk about that for pretty much for a good portion of it, but I know that's our goal with Greenville Water, is a limit update ours. Or at least look at it. I mean, we kind of aligned with the low inflow protocol now. So unless Duke updates it, theirs we'll keep it what it is. We refer to those levels. State funding is designated to complete phase 2 of the comprehensive study. I don't know where that's at with the Army Corps of Engineers, but I think we were gonna recommend that. And then the final category was promote engagement in the water planning process. The RBC continued beyond 25 with diverse and active representation mentioned with 90% of seats filled, and we just did that 10 minutes ago. So
I will say Dan said he's likely to drop off at the end of his term. He's an at-large.
Okay.
So he'll be off 2026.
Okay.
So you'll need one at-large.
126. Okay, that's fine. Good for that, but that's over 90% though.
Yep.
So that's a good thing. 6B is coordination occurs with groups that have existing education and outreach efforts focused on water conservation, and I know World Water. We just talked about that with World Water and Upstate Forever, and other groups to do that. And then collaborate occurred with the other RBC, Georgia Regional Water Planning Council, US Army Corps of Engineers. We're already starting that now with the upstate group, with the upstate water group. So that we're talking about. So, I mean, we are, I think a lot of those that we can do right now, I think that we had in our goal, we're already starting to do. Either by accident or intentionally by accident. So I think we're on the way. Yo, you want to add anything?
No, thank you. You're doing a great job.
That's it then. I'm done.
I mean, assuming the water SC plan is adopted, which is more likely it will be.
Yeah.
I mean, we're part of that, so we will, at least our entity can remain. Like I said, we're just trying to figure out what we do.
Correct. Yeah, well, we will have to come up with probably a meeting date and, I don't know if we'll have the remote capabilities like we have. in
Just open
Clemson.
Teams. I just open the Teams.
We'll open the Teams or something like that, but we'll do it internally. I mean, I think between them, Greenville Water has the resource too. So, I mean, even though we're not in the basin.
Well, what I was thinking about, I thought about it a couple of weeks ago, talk about outreach and getting out. Are these councils and such thing? And while I was talking about, we got a situation now a couple of weeks ago, and it was a solar generation station. I refuse to call them farms. They're not farms, they're solar fields. But anyway, you had this situation when it's okay, is this something this kind of group could address the fact when we start talking about water outflows and what certain economic development would cause potentially? Is this something, I mean, I know that's getting site specific or they property or that kind of thing, but is this something that we look at or that we would be a part of as a resource for local government? When all they're doing is looking at the feedlots and.
The question isn't limited to that. So remember, there's, I think it was 2 meetings ago, I put that question on our agenda as to how are we gonna provide guidance? I think it was Hartwell, I think it was Lake Hartwell Association. There was somebody that wanted a letter of support from us, from some.
That was it, Lake Hartwell Association.
I think it was the setback, water setbacks that might have been.
Yeah, it was yeah.
And of course, professionally and in every other way, of course, I support that. I do. That's a me thing. But as the chair of this RBC, I could not make a decision to issue a letter of support. And we have no process to have like a not emergency meeting, but
Well, then we were looking at because obviously, yes, the agricultural community in Abbeville was there in mass. It was a very long meeting. But the people, the energy company had documentation and from the consulting firm in Rhode Island and Connecticut, and about water flows and the surface areas and all that kind of thing. But okay, you want like, well, what about what's local in the state of South Carolina and groups like this where we are all the same theoretic mindset? That's something that we would be involved in, or local governments could reach out to these groups? Or we don't know that.
They could, but I don't know. Legality wise, I don't know what we can provide. That has to be spelled out. We were given a specific task.
Right.
By the state.
What was our mandate?
Yeah, that was our mandate. It came out of the original group and this is our mandate now. I think a lot of that has to be determined by the state water plan when it's developed. And because they do want us to continue, but they're going to have to probably, BES is probably going to spell out on a local level. Because that was one thing when I'm reading is they did recognize that the local water basin levels, you can't do a complete state saying this is the, you can, but they want to kind of, from reading it looked like they were kind of basing it on what we had in certain areas. So I don't know if they're going to give us any, other than outreach. We can give them, this is the state water plan, this is our message. Right. We can bring you that, and if it's in a recommendation that we say, hey, we want to support, setbacks and stuff, then yeah, we can do that. But if it's against the state water plan, I don't think we can legally do anything. I think right now, I think we're kind of in limbo because we did our mandate. I mean, we gave our recommendations. We're now in the implementation phase of those recommendations. And if it's not something in those recommendations that either is passed down to us as from the state water plan or was in our original water plan, they say, okay, you can do what you did in your plan. I don't know what else we can do.
This could be an information resource.
Right, I mean, but we do have some implementation stuff in there too, that we have, that we above and beyond that, but above and beyond that, I don't know what we can do. It's kind of vague, right?
We're not an advocacy in the sense that you're talking about.
But if local government wanted to reach out and say, if somebody recommended local government, well, go look at the Basin Council, get the Basin plan for an ex-council that was done as
Right.
part of.
And now, if they asked us to clarify some points in there, because all of us were in meetings. And, because, it's the same thing when you send a text to somebody and they get mad at you and it's like, well, that's not what I intended. So it's the same way with this. I mean, we brought one up with Scott, and you brought the one up about, I can't remember, about the wells. One of us hopefully will remember what we talked about, whatever we were doing. Because, but that's a similar situation, and we can clarify what we talked about, because I think that's all in our notes. I think it's all in we have, our basin plan is 200 some pages long.
Right.
So, and what I went over there, above it is like paragraphs of each one of those points about what we wanted to do. So, I think we can clarify on stuff.
Well, the reason I bring it up is because I'm sitting there and, if y'all, they bring up the watershed. I'm like, okay, really? Y'all gonna start talking about our watershed? And then you know that the data's out here that they can use locally, but some of the local planning departments and zoning departments, they got staff that's not. I mean, they don't even live in the county, so they don't understand, and they don't know what resources to pull. But we are a resource.
We are a resource, yes.
Okay, that's okay. I mean, it's so long, but yeah, that's a clarification. Yeah, okay, that's good.
Yeah, and then anything that was presented to us by VES or DNR about that's all in our, if you pull out our basin plan, that's all in there.
It's online, it's on the website.
And everything that was given to us in those meetings, is in our basin plan. That's why it's so long. So I think it's, anything in there, we're free reign to say, okay, this is what we meant, this is what we did. So, but I mean, I think right now, until they draft the plan and, well, it's in draft now, until they officially approve it. And then basically reach out to us, because, keep in mind, it's all on the legislation too, because, even though they say, when I read in section 9, this is the long-term goal. That funding to keep these going comes from the legislature. DES does not have a pot of money sitting there that it can use for this unless the legislature approves it. So.
We can buy our own lunch every day.
That's right. Yeah. So talk to them and get things passed.
There's one question that came in, and this may be for Scott in the back there, but what level of technical support will be available in the new year to the RBC? So for like the meetings they're talking about.
Well, we have staff available for office support. I think we'll be able to commit some staff to that, but it also probably depends on what type of technical support we're talking about.
Yeah, I'm thinking you'll be able to run a new model or something, but unless it's an easy one.
Yeah, that might be pushing the boundary a bit right there, but we'll have staff available to help when we can, and maybe funding available if we need to outsource this potentially. Well, we just have to wait and see.
Yes.
Thanks.
They talk to us about your needs.
But was there any put in this year fiscal year for it? Beyond,
You mean a budget request for us?
yeah,
I do not know that.
for the 2025, 26, but 2025. That's a my request. That's my request.
Their budget's July or October? July. So if it wasn't in the last one, they would be requesting it.
Yeah, I don't know what money was put in for this fiscal year for either RBC or, well, it would have been for river basin planning. Yeah, I guess we can try to find out, but that's a little, sometimes a little trickier to find stuff with that budget than it is. When it actually is, but then it's actually takes you longer time to look for it, and it's more to find it than what's in it. So,
Right, well, it sounds like regardless, I don't see us individually meeting until the spring, us as Upper Savannah.
Yeah.
However, you can anticipate an invitation from me to join in the Saluda Broad Upper Savannah meeting. That will try and push far enough out into February, March that people get it on their calendars and be available, either Teams or not. And we'll do that internally, I'll call it, regardless of whether or not DES has a financial. That being said, we'll probably invite representation from the agency to attend and answer questions and sit in the background, whether it be Scott or Joe or Scott and Joe, whatever the case should be.
if we
Build a rural water. Just build a rural water, build an outreach.
Bill into more water.
if we need a host location, I'm sure we can put in there somewhere.
I'll find a.
One of our,
Jeff Boss has already volunteered for that.
did he?
And then he was like, wait, I don't want to use our space, pick somewhere else.
I'm too funny.
Yeah.
He dangled it up there.
Joking about that.
I think he was kind of joking, but I think he also was like, he didn't want it to seem like Bingo was taking over, so he's like.
Yeah, I know, that's fine.
We'll collectively find a neutral territory that is large enough, and I'm sure there's plenty of free space around there, around wherever. That's right.
Oh, okay.
Well, there is. I don't mean Greenville, but there is. We always find a location to meet if need be. If there's a concern of what it looks like.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But you guys, I mean, they're central, so
We are central.
when the saloon, when we had our meetings in the saloon, because I filmed for Jeff when he was there, they were always kind of. So when usually they were at KC's place, which again, is another water utility. Yeah. So.
Stay tuned. Unless there's any other comments, I believe we're good here and this meeting's ready to adjourn. I said I worked really hard, just, it's not, unlike the Saluda, these will be bullet points. It's not gonna be a letter that has a lot of fancy language. I apologize. I just don't have time for that. It's going to say public comments, technical section 8.6, and the one last one, because I did ask for Daniel to words. It was we as, and I think it's to make sure that it's not you're the agricultural. It's we as Upper Savannah farmers oppose the permit and registrations recommendation in Chapter 8 of the State Water Plan draft. And we would prefer, and it's not Water SC's, but DES's plan to seek the AG's opinion on their regulatory jurisdiction. So that's what you can expect coming from the ag in regards to the permits.
You give me a lot of credit, but I have a lot of bullet points in this letter.
Very good. All right. Feel free to email me if something pops up into your minds, or you want to talk about Calvin Falls. Feel free to email me, like I said, if you expect at least a draft of the bullets, provide feedback. They're due Sunday. I will get them out on Friday. I don't, rather than Sunday during my working hours if I can, I would prefer. So please provide comment as quickly as you can so I can close the business Friday, maybe push them out through the portal. All right, this meeting is ready to adjourn. Thank you all so much for taking
Anybody need the
the time.
calendar for the new year? I do. Got, I have. December's running out quick. Huh? Well, we still,
Great holiday.
long time, my family's still need.
Myself, the bit was done.
Yeah. You get that, you get people don't use calendar anymore. But you like something right on, well, that's what. 10 years, that's a brisket turned out.
Thank you.
What? Yeah.